Alright, why don't we get started? So, would you like the lights the way they are or dim them down? I can dim them. Okay, so we are doing week 4, and week 4 deals with input and exception handling. So week 4 has some has your chapter 4 book summary, and it has a couple of sample programs in there, and then I have a video from the summer. So why don't I just go through this and tell you what's what. Okay, so at this point they're finally starting to tell you about doing input, and input is just information that gets into your program. Could be through clicking the mouse, could be by entering information on the keyboard, could be by reading some kind of a file, could be by getting information from some kind of a sensor and then feeding that into your program. Okay, so input is just a general term that refers to information and goes into your program. So for the purpose of this class, for now at least, we're going to be doing keyboard input. And there's a couple of different ways to do input. There's a way to do an input of a string. There's a way to do an input for a number. There's a way for you to open up a little dialog box and then in it enter information. So that's more like a graphical user interface input. And those are the ones we're going to go over today. Hey. So, and it's most of it is usually done with the system in object. Okay, the system in object is a way for Java to get information into your program, similarly to how you do the system out object, which is a way to get information out of your program. Okay, and the first one is input stream reader, buffered reader. Okay, so what you have to do is you have to type up all this stuff. You have to type up input stream reader new is equal to new input stream reader system in, and then this ISR is just some kind of a name you pick. Then you do buffered reader is equal to new buffered reader ISR. Okay, and that will allow you to enter strings, and I'll show you how to do that. In order for you to use these two, you need to have import java.io at top of your program, otherwise it's not going to work. And let me go jump to my little editor. Scanner input, buffer reader. Okay. So the buffered reader GUI inputs that I have posted in there shows you a little bit about strings, right? Just in case you forgot what a string is, even though we've been using them all this time, right? A string is anything inside quotes. Could be any kind of a text, spaces, special characters. As long as it's surrounded by quotes, it's good. It's a string. There's ways in Java. Java is actually pretty decent about working with strings, unlike C++, which is just makes your life miserable when you work with strings. You can do. It has all kinds of the string object has all kinds of built-in things in it, built-in methods, such as the char_et, right? So it requires a little more typing than if you took Python, but it still gets the job done. So there's ways for you to look at individual characters of the string. So if I wanted to look at this particular, at the H, that'll be my string char_et 0. Right? So each of these, and that's I guess a little bit of an introduction to arrays, which come later, but each of these characters has a number. It starts as 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, then the space is a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and that'll be the 10. Right? The D is the 10. So every character in the string is referred to by a number, and when we come to arrays, you're going to realize that these numbers are called the indexes. So each of these is the index of each of these individual characters. So if I wanted to show the H, I do my string char_et 0. If I wanted to show the L, the second L, I do my string char as 3. So these are just strings. There's a way for you to also check to see how many things are in the string. So for example, if I do my string.length, that allows you to see that there's 10 characters in the string. Okay. And we haven't gotten to loops yet, but loops are ways for you to make a program repeat a bunch of times. There's a whole chapter on this. We'll get to it when we get to it. But basically, you can tell it to go through these numbers automatically without you having to go in there and type them. Right? So I want to go from 0 to all the way to the end of whatever the last index is, and I set up this thing here, which is a for loop, and I tell it I starts at 0, and I tell it go on while I is less than my string length. What is my string length? Well, 10 characters. Okay, and then I tell it I++, that tells it increase I by 1 every time, and then I just plug in the I using my inside of my char at method, right? I feed it as an argument, and that's going to show you all the little letters. So what the purpose of this exercise here is to look for a specific character in a string, right? So what are we going to do? We're looking for the character L, and we're going to count it, right? So every time my character is equal to this, then we can count it. One thing I want to point out is that when you have strings, and again, we haven't really gotten to selection yet, but if you're trying to compare one string to another string, normally when you compare things, you do this equal thing. You cannot do that in strings with Java, okay? It just, I mean, it will work a lot of times, and will fool you like it's working, but there'll be many times when it doesn't work. And the reason for that is because you cannot compare strings in Java using the double equal sign. How are you going to compare it? The strings have a method called equals, right? So if I have one string, this is my string, I can check to see if it's equal to like dot equals and then some other string, right? Other string. So if this whole thing turns out to be true, then this whole thing is going to turn out to be 1 or 0, true or false, and we can use that inside of our ifs, but we're not there yet. Okay, so just the moral of the story is you cannot compare strings with the equal sign. Here I am comparing a character, the string, to another character, and it is okay to compare characters with the equal sign. Okay, so integers. You can. You just have to use that dot equals thing, right? So if I had a string in here, I would do. If I'm trying to compare it to something else, I'll say equals, and then I'll put parentheses, and then the string that I'm trying to compare it to, right? Like that kind of stuff. This would work. Like if I wanted to compare strings, but you know, you cannot do the equal sign because, and the reason for that is because strings are objects, and technically you cannot really compare objects to each other. Right? Because the object is just like an entity that exists in memory. It has a different memory address, right? And you can't just compare them with the equal sign. If you're talking about C++, in C++ you can overload operators, so you can basically change the meaning of the equal sign and tell it, okay, when I say equal, this object equals another object, then I'm trying to compare maybe this property of this object to this property of this object, right? You can have a human object that has an age, weight, a whole bunch of different properties, and when you're trying to compare one to another, you need to tell it, okay, what are we comparing? Are we comparing the age? Are we comparing the weight or the name? Okay, that's why we cannot compare strings with the equal. Okay, but anyway, this is just a way for you to find how many character or how many times the letter L appears inside of a string. And underneath here, I pretty much create an array. Let's not get into that. And the one thing that I want to show you, though, is actually let's run this thing, see if it works. So this is my BufferedReader. Okay. So, Okay, so I'm going to run this program. This is BufferedReader, Java C, BufferedReader Java. So far so good. Java, BufferedReader. Okay, and it shows you that my string has a length of 11 things, right? There's 11 things. It starts at 0. The last one is 10, right? So that's 11 total because we're counting the 0. Then underneath it, I'm showing you all the different letters inside of inside of the string. The next thing that I'm doing is I'm comparing. I'm checking to see if the L exists in there and how many times it appears. And that is this right here, right? So there's 3 letters L in the hello world. Okay, so just basic things, looking through a string. But really, that's not the purpose of this chapter. The chapter is this intro to strings is just so you remember what a string is. Okay, the purpose of this chapter really is talking about different kinds of inputs. Okay, so the first kind of an input is the buffered reader input, right? And that's what this is right here, right? So remember, you have input buffered reader, input stream reader, ISR is equal to new input stream reader system end, buffered reader, BR is equal to new buffered reader ISR. The ISR and the BR are just arbitrary names, variables that I made up. And then what I'm going to do is, and then I also have to do, well, if you want to be specific, you have to do import java.io input stream reader and import java.io buffered reader. If you don't want to do it this way, then you would just do an asterisk right here, and that will import everything inside of the .io object, basically. Okay, so but in order for me to prevent it from importing everything, I do this. Okay, and these imports become very easy once you start using Eclipse. We're not there yet, so I would still not say go ahead and use Eclipse, but when you start using Eclipse, which is a lot more than a basic text editor, you're going to see that if something's missing, it will highlight it. It will tell you, oh, you forgot to import this thing, and you click the little thing, and it imports it for you. Okay?
Is Eclipse just a compiler?
It's an IDE, right? This is Eclipse, in case you don't know, right? Yeah, it lets you write your code in a little bit easier than writing it in a text editor. But I don't want you to just start using an IDE right off the bat, because I want you to get comfortable with creating the code from scratch, right? If you don't need to rely on Eclipse, you know how to do Java better, I think. Okay, so when we get to chapters 9 and 10, I will start encouraging you to use Eclipse for practical purposes and reasons, because it really helps. Okay, it will help explain things. Like, for example, I want to see, oh, what is println? Well, it tells you what println is and how to use the println. I want to use something else. It shows you how to use whatever you need to use. Okay, but we're not going to use it as an 8 just yet. So going back to this, so this is the first way that the book tells you about entering information from the keyboard. So these 2 lines, line 16 and 17, are needed so that you can start reading lines. Okay, what is read line? Read line is just a text with spaces including. Okay, so let me compile this thing so you can see it. I'm going to take this out. Actually, let me see something. Modules. Do I have parse? Yeah, I have parse nums. So this is the actual program from the chapter from the textbook, which shows you how to read a number. Yeah, they're using it for a number. So you can use this thing to read a number. You can use it to read a string. One thing that you need to do is you need to add this throws java.io exception. Okay, and what is an exception? Well, it's like the try catch thing we did in Python, right? Exception is some kind of an error that can happen once your program is running, right? That's an exception. So like maybe the program runs and you're supposed to enter a number and you enter some text and then the program crashes. Well, instead of the program crashing and giving you like a wall of meaningless text that maybe it makes sense to you if you know Java, you can substitute that error message to something else. Okay, we're not really showing how to handle the error message here. We're just telling it, basically the Java language requires you to catch this, to at least attempt to catch this exception, even though in this particular example in the book they're not really showing you how to handle the exception. So this is part of the language. You need to have throws Java IOException. So let me go back to the command line.
What happens if you don't have that?
I'll show you right now. Yeah, it won't like it. It will not like it. It will complain. So let's go Java C parse nums, compile it, works fine. Right, now let me take this out. I'm gonna take this out. Alright, it's commented out, save it, try to compile again. There you go. Right, what is it saying? Unreported exception, IOException must be caught or declared to be thrown. Okay, so basically you cannot attempt to enter input unless you have a mechanism to catch this, or to attempt to catch the possible error that this program could generate while it's running. That's just part of the Java language. Okay, and if you think it's annoying, it's actually a good thing. Okay, again, it's better for it to give you error messages before it gets going than for it to start going and then you enter something and then it crashes. Okay, so always better to have these kind of error messages and warnings. The pickier the language it is in the beginning, the less likely you are to encounter some kind of issues when it's running. Okay, so now this thing is running. Let me compile it again. I'm going to go Java parse nums. Okay, and it's asking me to enter a number. So again, this thing could be used to enter a string. Just the example here happens to be enter a number. Okay, so S1 BR read line is the part that I'm going to enter. So I'm going to enter some kind of an information. That information is going to be a string, because that's what S1 is, and that's what br.readline it takes, right? It takes a string, just like the input in Python. Okay, and then I'm going to tell you, okay, the number you entered is this. I mean, it still is a string, right? At this point, okay. So that means that if I try to do some kind of a math with that number, it's not going to work, right? So let's say, for example, just give you a little refresher about the string concatenation. So let's say I have a string num1 is equal to 1, and then I have a string num2 which is 2, right? That's that. Okay? And then what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to show you, I'm going to do a system out print ln, and I'm going to show you num1 plus num2. Alright, so that's, we're trying to do the math there. I'm going to show you num1 plus num2 equals plus that whole thing. Oops. Okay, so what is it going to do when I do this?
Isn't it going to give you an error with the string because you already declared num1 as a double?
Good point. Let's make it a capital num. Alright, so num1, num2, what is going to do now? What do you think? When I run my program, what will this line of code show me?
Isn't it going to give you an error because you're trying to use a string to do a calculation that's...
You would think. Well, let's see. So I'm going to save this thing. Save it. Compile it. Come on, what's going on with you? Java C parse nums Java. Hold on. There's something weird happening here. Java C parse. Oh, I'm not in downloads. Java C parse nums Java. Okay, Java parse nums. So see what it did? It grabs one of them and it puts it right next to the other one. Okay, so this is string concatenation. Okay, when you have two strings and you put the plus sign in between of them, what it does is it puts them together right next to each other. It doesn't do the math. Okay, but if I do this thing here, all right, so I'm going to just grab this whole thing. So this one here shows you 1, 2. Right. Subtraction is probably, that might give you an error. So let's see. So subtraction, Control C, Java C. There you go. Yeah, it does not know how to do subtraction. Okay, so yeah, if you have strings and you do a plus, then you can concatenate them, so making one bigger string out of the two little ones. If you have anything else, it's not going to work. And yeah, so now the next one is, let's say I wanted to grab this thing. I'm going to copy it, paste it, and I'm going to change this to this. So instead of num1, I'm going to have double, parse double. Alright, and yes, Java requires more typing. That's how it is. So that's the first one. And we're going to do the plus, and I'm going to do that. And yeah, one more at the end. And that should do it. Okay, so save it, compile again. Oops, where's that minus? Oh, this here. So that's got to be a plus, save, compile, and run this thing. Okay, so see, it's actually doing the math. So if you, the moral of the story is, if you happen to have a string, which we do, and you really want to do some kind of a math with that string, then you could convert it into a double or cast it, right? So this here is called casting. What is casting? Casting means forcing this thing to become of a different data type, right? For the time being, right? So this here is called casting, okay, which is forcing the num1 to temporarily become a double, okay? And there's ways to do this with, if you want to convert something to an integer or float, you could do that too, long. Alright, so this is what's happening in here. So we're going to ask the user to enter a number. We're going to read that number as a string. We're going to put it into the s1 variable, which is a string. And then later on, I'm going to say, alright, well, the number num1, which is a double, is equal to double dot parse double, which is s1. So now num1 is the actual numeric value of s1, which is a string originally, and we can do some kind of a math with it, right? So enter a number 5, right? And then here you can do some kind of a math with that number. Num times 5 is 25. That's what this is showing. Make sense? Any questions? Yeah. Yeah, that's next. Okay, so this is your input stream reader, and I would recommend using this for strings. Okay, so that's one. The next one is, let me go back to the little preview that I had. So that was that first parse nums.java that is in the textbook, and really a very good way for you to learn the material in the textbooks. And in this textbook is type up all the sample programs. There's not a whole lot of them, but just as you're reading through the chapter, you might get lost. You might, might not make sense. Just type up the program. That's why I don't have them posted, so that you don't just copy paste them. But type up the programs. If you have some kind of an errors or issues, that's fine. You'll learn better that way. And then once it's running, it will make sense. So a lot of the assignments starting now, so up to this point, chapter 3, I gave you what you needed. You didn't really need the textbook. But from now from now on you will need the actual textbook for the class, because that's where all the assignments are, all the examples. A lot of them are basically type up the sample program and then change something. Okay, so if you don't have the textbook, you can't do that. All right, so again, talking about input validation or exception handling. Okay, trying to see if something can be entered and then catching the exception. Okay, scanner class. Okay, so the scanner class, parse num scanner. Let me go to this here. Parse num scanner. Okay, so this is the sample program from the book. Talks about how to use a scanner. Okay, for the scanner, and for the scanner, you need to import java.util. Right? The other one, the parse nums. What did you have to import? You have to import java.io.asterisk, which imports everything from the IO class. Okay. This one here, what we're importing is everything from the util class, okay, which is the thing that contains this scanner object, okay. So this is actually a little bit shorter than the other one. The other one you had to do these 2 lines of code, right, and then you can start reading things from the keyboard. On this one here, you have to do just this 1 line, and then you can start using the input, okay. What would I recommend this for? Well, if you want to enter a number from the keyboard, it makes sense to use a scanner. Okay, why would you read it as a string and then convert it to an integer or whatever, some other number? Just read it as a number. Okay. Now the scanner does have some issues with if you're trying to enter strings with spaces. So if you're trying to type up a whole sentence, it won't work very well. Okay, so if you're going to be entering strings, use this. Okay, and if you're going to be entering numbers, just use this, and that's that. Okay, so how does this one work? Let's have a look at it. Java C parse num scanner, Java parse nums scanner. All right, so enter a number 44, and num is 44, and we can do math with it. Num times 5 is 220. So this is how you enter numbers from the keyboard. Okay. If you wanted to enter a float, it will be a sc.next float. If you wanted to enter an integer, it will be sc.next int. Okay. And again, this is something that one of the reasons that I would recommend that you eventually start using Eclipse. And why don't I just show you like a little bit of Eclipse here, give you a taste of the good life. Copy. Alright, so I'm going to make, I'm in the 24 project, file, new class, and I'm going to name my class parse num scanner. I'm going to finish this thing, and I'm going to go back to my code. I'm going to copy this whole thing here, paste it. Okay, so just showing you one of the benefits of using Eclipse, right? So let's say I'm trying to make an integer input, so I'm going to have an int num2. Okay, I would say num2 is equal to sc, and as soon as I do the dot, this is the cool thing about Eclipse, is it will list all the different things that you could do to this object, right? Anything that's already built into this object I could use, and it's not just that, it doesn't just list it, but explains how to use it. All right, so this is my next int. What is the next int? Well, and it lets you enter an integer input and what kind of exceptions you're supposed to use to catch it. Okay. So anyway, the only thing I was looking for this is how you're going to do an integer input, right? And if you wanted to do a float, then you would do sc dot next. I guess there's only double. Next byte. Oh, there it is. Has next float. No, that's has next. Yeah, and then just next is a whole string. There's next line, which is a whole line. Anyway, so different ways for you to enter numbers. Okay, I think it's just next double, next int. So the double is the same for float. All right, going back. So I'm going to leave Eclipse. Actually, I'm going to do this. So in Eclipse, if I have this, if I forgot this, all right, notice what it does. It automatically highlighted this scanner as red, right? And again, this is just like an extra aid, but it will be better for you to not rely on Eclipse, but just to figure out these errors and why you're getting them. So right now it's telling me, okay, well, something's wrong with the scanner. I mouse over this thing, and it's telling you, oh, look, just import scanner. Okay, import scanner. Click, and then it goes in the top, and it imports the scanner for me. So it's a very neat tool, right? Not only does it list the kind of methods that are available inside of these objects that we're using, but it also helps you troubleshoot the errors. Okay? So, but again, don't use it for now. Let me go back to my basic text editor. So in my text editor, remember before we needed to have throws something. Okay, let's see if this program works when I don't have throws anything, right? So I'm going to go in there, I'm going to comment this out, save it, go to my terminal, compile it, and it's happy. Okay, so what does that tell you? It tells you that you don't need to try, you don't have to do the try catch thing that we learned in Python for a scanner, right? So you do not have to try to catch an exception. You don't have to do the throws exception, unlike what we did here, right? For this, you need to have throws exception when you're doing the input stream reader, buffered reader. It's part of the syntax of the language. When you have a scanner, you don't have to do this, right? So I can just delete this and it will work just fine. One more reason to use scanner, right? Okay. So if you want to enter a number, use scanner. You can use a next int, you can use next double for decimals, next ints for whole numbers. That's basically it. So go to the next one. Oh, by the way, you can use scanner for strings, you can use scanner for words, but if you have a string with spaces, it's going to start messing up on you. Okay? That's been my experience at least. Okay, next one is the StringTokenizer. Okay, StringTokenizer is a way for you to basically have an input of a string, and there's a sample program in there that allows you to basically have, where's my StringTokenizer? Do I have it? Yeah, there it is. StringTokenizer ST. Okay, so what is the StringTokenizer? You can enter a string with spaces and like a whole sentence, and you can break it by spaces. It's like this Python split thing. Okay? With Python, you have a way for you to enter a string and then split it into words using a split function. Well, this thing here is built into the language of Java, which is basically a specific kind of an input. The StringTokenizer lets you enter strings with spaces and break them down into little words. Okay? So for example, first of all, we have the input stream reader ISR BufferedReader BR, which is the same way that we did, a regular string input earlier. Okay, and all we're going to use this for is to basically read a line from the keyboard. Right, so the user goes in there, enters a sentence with spaces, then you create a string tokenizer, and with the string tokenizer, you feed the input string into this new string tokenizer. Okay, so now ST is equal to basically the string tokenized, the original string tokenized. Okay, and then what are we going to do with this? Right here, you can do S1 is equal to ST next token. So that basically goes in there and just grabs every subsequent word. Yes? Any questions? Okay, so let me go in there and have a look if I have this thing somewhere. Not in here. Do I have? No, I don't have it. Okay, but there's a sample program in the textbook. Just type it up, and you're going to see how it works. So that's the purpose of a string tokenizer. You get a text with spaces. You break it down by spaces, and every subsequent word in that sentence basically is grabbed by using st.nextToken. Okay. All right. And then the next one is the GUI input. So this is yet another way for you to get input in Java, and that is this sample program in the textbook. Okay, right here. So what is the GUI input? It's similar kind of sort of to the BufferedReader input, except you don't have to do a whole lot of typing. So let me just show you what it looks like. Save this. This is Java C GUI input, Java GUI input, and it pops up a little dialog box. All right, a little dialog box with a little text entry window, area in it. And I go in there, I enter some kind of a value, like 33, I hit the OK. So as soon as I hit the OK button here, that means we're going to grab whatever's been entered in this dialog box, we're going to put it into the S1 string. Then we're going to convert it into a double, right? The default input of these dialog box, the show input dialog box, is a string. Okay, so in here I'm converting that string to a double, just like I did with the BufferedReader thing. And then I'm going to use another dialog box. The first one is show input dialog, the other one is show message dialog, right? And the second one is going to show me what I entered. So have a look. So I go in there, I hit the OK button, and there we go. Another little dialog box shows up telling you what you entered.
If you enter a character, it will crash.
Most likely. Let's try it. There you go. Okay, so in order for you to not see these kind of an errors, right? I have to do that throws and then accept, right? There's ways for me to handle this error message. So if you don't want your program to crash and show you something like this, there's ways for you to generate a useful message telling the user, well, you didn't enter a number, and then you can redirect the user back into the part of the program that generated the error so that it can try to do it again. Okay? So that's that. And let's see what else I have in there. Oh, there's the scanner input. I already had it. Oh, so this is some other stuff that I have in there. So these are the sample programs that I had. Shows you how to do this one here. Reads a whole line, including spaces, using the scanner. This one here reads a single word. Okay, this one here reads a single integer, and this one reads a double. Okay, so that's that. The try-catch business. Okay, so the try-catch business is I'm not sure. Well, it's in there. It's in the book. So what I'm going to do is okay. So let's look at what this is. Right. So I have a program try-catch.java, which imports Java IO and Java util, which suggests that I'm going to be using both of these, right? The input stream reader and the scanner at some point, maybe. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I never used it, but whatever. Okay. No, the util is for the tokenizer. All right. So what I'm doing is I am going to read a string. So let's have a look at this thing. Java C, actually clear. Java C try catch Java. Okay, and then Java try catch. Okay, so what I'm going to do is the expected thing for me to do is I'm supposed to enter three different things like 10, 20, 30. You know, each number separated by the others with spaces. Then, so we're going to read that whole thing as one big string. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do a try and a catch. Okay, so that's similar to that throws exception, whatever that we saw earlier in the BufferedReader. Not in there. Not in there. Like this is similar to this. All right, so it's basically another syntax for you to handle exception. Okay. So what is the possible exception or error that could result in here? Well, you tell me. What do you think? What could go wrong with my input? that I had. Right? Maybe I didn't enter all numbers, right? Maybe I entered a whole one big text. Maybe I didn't enter 3 of them. Okay? So there's different kinds of errors that could happen. So if I run it like this, you can see that it works, right? We got the strings. The thing that I entered was this, and then I can actually show you that I'm doing math with it. So I'm using the StringTokenizer to pull each of these different numbers separated by spaces from the big string, and then convert them into numbers, and then I do some kind of a math with these numbers. Okay, now let's have a look at some of the other things. So let's say I'm going to run this thing again, and I'm going to give it 2 numbers. Okay, so if I did not have this error here, so if I did not have this here, the error message that I'm going to get is something similar to this. Okay, so again, the moral of the story is, if you don't want to see this kind of a weird message, use the try catch. You can tell the user, okay, you didn't enter 3 things, which makes it easier. Okay, another thing that I could do is maybe I'm going to run this thing now. I'm going to give it three things, 1, 2, 3, but they're not numbers. Okay, so that will be a different kind of an error message, similar to this wall of text that gives you some kind of an error message. But instead of similar kind of an error message, I'm giving you this kind of an error message. And what is this error message? Well, number format exception for input string 8. Okay, so that's the e.get message. So the e.get message allows you to easily insert the kind of error that happened. Okay?
How does it know that there's an error from the input side?
It's just built, yeah, it's built into the Java language. Yeah. So yeah, and then later on you're going to see a whole bunch of other things that are built into the language. Okay, this E actually pops up when we start doing the graphical user interfaces with the buttons and all that stuff. Okay, how do you detect which button was clicked? There's an E in there that shows up.
So like in this case here, where you put no such element exception.
Yeah,
It's a string, but how did you know that that's what you want right there? You didn't add 3 strings. How does it know?
Well, then I know for a fact that no such element exception happens when I don't have enough elements, right? So if I cannot complete this piece of code, that means that when I entered the string, they did not have 3 things separated by spaces. So I know that's what's going to happen. That's the reason why I would get this error message, and that kind of makes sense for me to to generate this error message.
Put 5, it's going to say that, right?
If I put 5, I think if you put 5, it'll be fine. So what if the question is, what if I put more things than I need to, right? So I'm going to run this thing. I'm going to give it a 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. That's okay, because it actually goes in there and I'm telling it, grab the first 3, and then who cares about the rest,
Okay.
right? Yeah, so the only error message you get is if you don't have at least 3. And you also get an error message if you didn't enter numbers, because where is that? Well, right here. You're trying to convert these things to numbers. If it's a string, you can't. Okay? So
What if you don't know the names of the exceptions? You just run it? and
just
see
run
if
it, see what it is.
and
Yeah,
then
you can
it
do that.
goes
Yep, totally. You can do that.
until you get all the exceptions.
You can do that.
Totally.
Yep.
Because I mean, I don't know, but I know what these exceptions are.
Well, yeah.
Off the top of my head.
Totally, yeah. You can run the program, see if it, it generates an exception, and just catch that exception.
What Eclipse tell you?
Yes, Eclipse will tell you a whole bunch of these. Okay, so that's that. So writing your programs in Eclipse is like writing them in writing your English paper in Word, right? Would you write it in a text in a notepad? I actually used to, believe it or not, I did. I wrote my papers in Notepad because I didn't want to have any. I didn't want something invasive telling me, oh, you had a typo here. I just wanted to focus on what I'm going to do and then lay out what I'm going to write out, and then I'm going to deal with the syntax. Maybe you want to do that kind of stuff when you're programming. Okay, a lot of hardcore programmers choose to write in just basic text editors. Okay, I actually had one student at MPC who he took Python and he wrote every program using the VI editor, which is this, in the command line, right? There's no ways for you to click on this thing. There's no ways for you to interact it with, just, it's a command-based text editor. So you want to save something, there's no Control S, there's no click and save, there's no, even the tab doesn't do what you think it would, right? If you want to search, you can't go find or whatever. There's commands for every single thing, right? If I want to create a file and I want to save it, so I want to create a file, hello world. How do I save this thing? I can't click on anything. There's no way for me to save. You have to do shift, colon, oops, no, that's not, you have to do some, right now I'm in insert mode, right? And then you can go escape, shift, colon, X, and then now it's going to ask me for a file name. All right, so I have to shoot first initially, so let's do this. Q, Q makes it quit. So if I want to do vi some file.txt, right? Now I have a file, and then in it, if I want to try to type, right? So I go hello world, right? If I want to save this thing, I do escape, this, X, and then that saves it, right? So yeah, I had a student who wrote the whole freaking Python class in this, all right? Why? It is, yeah. I was laughing at him, but he was like one of those. He was actually working towards he actually ended up getting a job in Minnesota as a security, networks and security guy for like $90,000, and he didn't have a bachelor's, he didn't have an associate's, he didn't even have his basic math done, but he did the CEH, the Certified Ethical Hacker. He did the OSCP, which is another certification exam. He was done with the Certified Ethical Hacker. He was halfway done with the OSCP, and they hired him. So there's a really big demand for that kind of stuff. He works for Target, like testing their stuff. Like, yeah, because Target got robbed with credit cards big time. So they built their own security team, and he was one of the first ones. But that's the reason why he was using a VI, because if you're a Linux administrator or whatever, and you're in the security field, you might end up using VI to write scripts and test things. All right, but so yeah, there's a sometimes you might want to use just a basic text editor. I don't care. Okay. So then the next thing is creating a class for a library. So the book basically tells you, well, look, if you've been writing a lot of programs, you should start collecting these at this point, like having like a toolbox of things you've done, right? And if you have a collection of Java files inside of a folder, that's called a package. Okay, so everything that's inside of the same folder can see each other. That's a package. Okay. Formatting input and output. So if you want to round, yes.
About the folder thing.
Yeah.
There's one program in one of the chapters where you have two files.
Yep.
And you want to set folder. If you create in Eclipse, right, where you have it as long as it's in the same path, it's okay.
Yes. Yeah.
You don't have to create a folder in Eclipse.
No,
And
Eclipse
put
will.
it in a text editor, you do.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And Eclipse will automatically arrange everything in the same project in the same folder.
Suppose you have both files there that are interacting with each other.
Yes.
You just use the default package.
Yes.
Now, default package isn't recommended though.
I don't use them. Yeah, I don't use them. I mean, if you have to use packages, then on top of the on top of your code, you have to say what package you're using and all kinds of other things. Let's not even go there. So let me close this. I'll leave it. Okay, so formatting input and output. So if you've done Python, this is very similar. Remember your print. That's the kind of same thing here. So let's say we have some kind of a number that we want to round, and there's look at pages 218 through 219 to see how to format different things. But let's say I'm going to go in there, and I'll put it in here. So let's say I have I'll use it right here. Okay, so I have int num, and I have a double num2. So this one is 3.143, whatever. This is 10. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to show this number but round it. Okay, and there is a system.out.printf, and that lets you round things. So let's say I want to do num equals %i, and then I say num2 equals %f, and then it goes commas, just like C++. So it's comma, and then the first one is num, and the second one is num2. So the syntax is slightly different from Python, if you're thinking of that. Right? In Python we have to do a % in here, and then parentheses before all these different things. In C++ and in Java we don't do that. There's just, just list the different variables that we're going to be putting. So what is the %i? Well, first of all, let me save this thing and see if it works. So this is the BufferedReader. So Java C, BufferedReader, Java BufferedReader. Oops. Conversion I. %i. Oh, I think there's no %i. I think it's D in Java. %d. Save it. Java C, Java, yeah, there you go. Okay, so %d, in other languages it's %i, and Java is %d, don't ask why. Okay, so %d means insert variable num here. Okay, when I say %f, it tells it, and let me do a new line at the end, \n, because notice how it's kind of put this stuff here at the end of my results. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to, let's try it again, save this, compile, run. Right, so now it's on a new line. So notice how in here it shows me the decimal number with a whole bunch of different digits. So let's say I want to round it. So %f here means insert variable num2 here, and this one is as integer. Okay, and this one is as decimal number. Okay, but this does not round it. If I want to round it, I copy this, and it's the same thing as Python, same thing as C++. Let's say I want to round it to 2 decimals. All right, so that basically tells it inserts variable num here, round it to 2 digits, 2 decimals, decimal digits. Okay, so if I save this, I run it again, and now you can see it rounded. Okay, questions? We're good? Okay, so this is your formatting output. If you want to round numbers, look at some more examples on these 2 pages. Some mathematical methods, just because there's different ways for you to do math in Java. You can do powers, you can do signs, you can do absolute values. There's all kinds of different built-in methods inside of the math object. And one thing that I should warn you about is that a lot of times when you try to have some kind of a decimal number math, right? You're adding like 2 plus 2 or something, or no, let's say 2.5 plus 2.5. It'll end up being like a 5.000000001, right? And that trailing 1 is because of the floating point of how we represent decimal numbers in binary, okay? And basically, let me actually just jump to my other class so I can show you. Is it here? Or actually maybe in the 45. I think it's, let's go back to the other one. There's a video that I have for this. No, that's not it. Maybe it's in the 45. No. No, not 45, 46. No. No. There you go. Floating point discrepancies. There's a video in there. That would be nice if it opened it.
Converting 5.2 into the floating point representation. Number 5 can be represented in a binary as 1, 0, 1. Point 2, we are converting to binary by multiplying it by 2. Point 2 times 2 is 0.4, 0. 0.4 times 2 is 0.8, 0. 0.8 times 2 is 1.6. 1.6 times 2 is 1.2. So now we see that we came back to 0.2, which means we'll repeat the pattern. So we know that 5.2 can be represented in a binary as 101.00110011, and it goes forever. So now,
Okay, so basically it's right here. So because you cannot go forever, you actually have to end up rounding this number. So you cannot accurately represent a decimal number, not always as a binary equivalent. Okay, and because of that, there's this floating point discrepancy that happens every time we do decimal with binary. So basically it's just built into the computers. Okay, so you're gonna run into some kind of issues like that every once in a while. Just need to account for it. It's similar to how we have irrational numbers in our regular number system. You know what a rational number is? It's no idea. What's an irrational number?
Oh,
Yeah.
irrational.
Decimals?
It doesn't. It basically does not have a.
Not whole number.
It cannot be represented as a fraction of two integers. That's the one of definition, and the other definition is there. It's like pi, for example. The pi does not have any kind of a pattern like we see here. There isn't like 3.14, 0.14, 0.14. So we cannot accurately say, well, it's 3.14, right? It just keeps changing and changing and changing. You cannot accurately represent pi. It's just some irrational number. So that's what happens in these floating point discrepancies in binaries. Okay, so going back, where was I? Going to this here. Okay, so that's just to let you know that sometimes decimals are not going to work out very nicely. And this here is an example of casting. I kind of showed you the casting business when we did the scanner input. When we say SC next double, actually no, that's not it. When we did the tokenizer, right here. When we did the tokenizer, that's still not a casting. Damn it! Hold on, I got it. Not here. Not here. This right here. All right. So this is the casting that I told you about. It is basically you're getting a variable of one data type, and you're forcing it to become something else. It does not change the original data type of the variable. You're just temporarily forcing it to become something else. Okay. So that's a casting, and that's what this thing talks about, right? Casts, conversion methods. You already saw it. Parse double string, right? That's this kind of stuff here. Okay. So there's basically ways in Java to convert something from one data type into another data type. Okay. So this is your chapter 4, and with chapter 4. We have a couple of assignments that go with that. And those are these right here. Right? And for these you will need the textbook. Okay? That's what I'm saying. You better get the textbook. The first 3 weeks I have set them up so that you don't need the textbook. I am thinking about doing this for the rest of the chapters. I just haven't had the time for it yet. Okay? So one day there will be no textbook for this class, just like most of my other classes, but not yet. Sorry. Okay? Questions? Alright, that's all I have. You're welcome to stay behind if you want. We still have 25 minutes. And then I have another class at 11:20. If you need help with anything, let me know.
Can I take pictures of your book? Because I have the other.
I don't have the book with me, but you can look at. Oh, you wanted to look at the assignments? Take pictures of assignments. Remind me next time so I can bring my book.
Okay.
Because I don't like to carry it. 'Cause it's extra weight.
So how would it, so for
I've got mine if you want to take.
There you go.
pictures
Oh,
before I
okay.
take off.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. So if you don't have the latest edition, which is the extended edition or whatever, what you could do is you could, look at the assignments, what assignments you're supposed to do, right? Section 4.1, whatever. Go through these, take pictures of the textbook with your phone, and then problem solved. Alrighty. And if you want me to bring the textbook, I don't mind bringing it. Just